So did you know that they say that the quality of the Zenit cameras is all dependent on how much or how little vodka the factory workers drank that day? Up to you to figure out which is which. Folks, welcome back to the channel. My name's Alex Laux, and today on this beautiful winter's day I have the perfect camera for such conditions. The Zenit 3M, a masterclass in 60s design and one of the most numerous cameras ever produced by famous Russian optical maker KMZ. So I'm here in downtown Oakville. It's snowy. The sun is nicely blocked by clouds, perfect day to be out. So I have this camera on loan from my good friend John Meadows, but before we actually get out and shoot, let's go back to the studio. I can give you a little bit of background, and this camera has a wonderful history, and give you a brief tour of this very simple but well-made camera. So I'll catch you here in a bit. In 1942, facing the onslaught of Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, in order to defend their camera manufacturing capacities, opened up KMZ, or Krygnowski Mechaniczny Zawod. KMZ had its start building Fed rangefinders, otherwise known as Fed Zorkis, itself a copy of the Leica II. The irony is that KMZ also ended up under Nazi control. But when the war ended and the Soviet occupation of Eastern Germany resulted in a major boost to the Soviet camera industry, especially the lenses, as they carried off a lot of Zeiss Icon and Zeiss equipment, raw materials, and, of course, cameras. In the end, it was KMZ who got the last word. And while rangefinders continued to see productions as the Zorki line saw incremental improvement through the post-war and into the mid-century, KMZ recognized the rising popularity of SLRs and began development of their own SLR model based on their Zorki rangefinder. Sounds familiar? It should. Using the same chassis, they cut out the rangefinder, the frame, and installed a mirror box, pentaprism, used the existing shutter, and even the M39 lens mount, and in 1952 released the Zenit. This was later retconned to Zenit 1 in 1952, but was simple compared to other SLRs in the day, but proved that KMZ could build a popular SLR. In 1955, the Zenit C was released. It replaced the string-based mirror pull with something a little more robust and added a standard PC sync socket. And in 1960, the Zenit 3 marked a major departure from the old rangefinder-based design elements, most notably adding a standard film advance, replacing the traditional knob. However, it wasn't until the Cristal in 1961 that the last elements of rangefinder technology was replaced. The bottom loading was replaced with a standard hinged film back. Unfortunately, the Cristal, despite being an incredibly looking camera, did not prove as popular as the Zenit 3. KMZ combined everything they had learned since 1952, and in 1962 released the Zenit 3M. This is a masterclass in 60s design, especially Soviet design. It cleaned up the overall appearance, kept the standard film advance lever, rear loading film door, and even the M39 lens mount. The 3M also marked the first entry into the export market for the Zenit series. And in addition to having standard Roman letter branded Zenit 3Ms, it also was listed under the brands such as Zenith, Calamar Global, and Reviewflex. Even after the release of the Zenit E, the production of the 3M continued all the way into 1970, and even it outstripped production numbers as the popular E did. But now let's take a closer look at this brilliant 1960s camera design. If you're looking for the idea of a simple camera design, look no further than the Zenit 3M. As I mentioned before, this is a masterclass and fantastic look at the design elements that really typified Soviet technology, especially Soviet camera technology, through the 1960s, and would be the final Zenit rangefinder that used this body type. You have, at the front, you have your PC sync socket, your self-timer, the lens, which is your M39 mount. This one is equipped with the desirable Helios 44. And you can see by the nameplate here, the engraving, that this is in fact an export model because it's written in standard Roman text. Up at the top, again, very simple design. This is your rewind knob with sort of a reminder piece to show which film you had loaded into it. And then here you have your shutter speed dial. There isn't much option here. It goes down from 1/30th of a second, which is also your sync speed bulb, and it goes all the way up to 1/500th of a second. And to change the shutter, you simply pull this up and rotate it. You have here, this is your rewind release lock. You have your shutter, and then you have your film advance. Now this is also fully manual, so you will need to reset it. I've just been ignoring it. And then this huge long thing is actually your film advance. You're going nearly 180 degrees on this one. And once you have the camera advanced and cocked, at this point you can actually go ahead and safely change your shutter speeds. So give this a listen. Now that's what I call a shutter release. You have a nice simple rounded viewfinder, and then you have your film back here, and that's released by this little lock here. And inside you can see the simple cloth shutter speed, a nice little spot where you can insert your film, and a simple take up and pressure plate. You got the cloth shutter. Now the one thing to remember is when you are putting your film in, that you do lock that down because it is a manual piece. All right, I think that's enough with this. Let's take this out into the field and give it a go. All right, so today I have loaded Ilford Delta 100, which I'm going to be developing in Perceptol. So let's head further into downtown Oakville while I talk a little bit about my experience with the camera, its pitfalls, its quirks, and some of the more interesting parts of it. All right, let's go. There's a certain deceptive simplicity with the Zenit 3M. The first thing to realize is that there's no automation. You're on your own, the camera will let you fail, and you will pay for every mistake. Loading the film is simple enough, which for a camera this age is a nice touch, but don't get cocky. Also, don't add too much back tension, the film advance will tear your film. There's no light meter and not even an accessory shoe for a Reveni Labs meter, so you're stuck with an external meter or going with Sunny 16. The shutter tops out at 1/500th of a second, so you can easily work with 400 speed films. But make sure you have the film advanced and the shutter cocked before changing that shutter speed. The viewfinder is decent with a fast lens. It's bright, but offers no information, no focus age, and do your best with what you can with your lens wide open, and then stop it down. Oh, you also have to remember to manually stop down the lens before taking the shot. The shutter is heavy and requires a firm push to trip, and then your viewfinder goes black, no automatic mirror return, and that's done by gently using the nearly 180 film advance. To rewind the film you need both hands, one to hold down the release lock, the other to manually rewind. Hope you don't tear your film. But what really makes these cameras special are the optics. So while I finish off my roll, let's go back to the studio and I'll talk to you a little bit more about the lenses that can be made to fit the Zenit 3M. The first thing to remember with the Zenit 3M is that not all M39 mounts are created equal. Well, yes, the Zenit 3M does have an M39 mount. It is a little different from the Leica thread mount. And if you do mount your lights glass on it, you'll never focus it to infinity. The thread pitch is just too different.
Also, don't try Soviet rangefinder M39 glass. Good chance if you get the wrong lens, you could damage the lens, the mirror, or both. But don't worry, there's plenty of excellent Soviet optics out there, and all of it based on Zeiss design. The most affordable lens for the 3M is the Industar 50, a 50mm f2 lens. But most people are looking for that desirable Helios 44, a 58mm f2. Sadly, because of the optical properties of the Helios, it has driven up the prices. But if you want a bit more variety, look at the Mir 1, a 37mm f2.8, and the Tear 11, a 135mm f2.8 to round out your collection.
So there you go. That's the Zenit 3M. It may not be a hot rod. It's more of a tractor. It's a blunt instrument. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. Take pictures. Nothing more, nothing fancy, nothing shiny. Personally, when it comes to the KMZ Zenit line, I prefer the Zenit E. What about you? What are your experiences with KMZ and Zenit cameras? Do you prefer the Zorky rangefinders, or do you prefer the much more modern Zenit series? Leave me a comment below. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hit that bell notification icon. Leave me a thumbs up. Until next time, my name's Alex Laux. Get out there, stay safe. In Soviet Russia, the camera shoots you.